everyone. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you here. We have major talks speakers about supply chain, and we'll be discussing about sustainable supply chain management, the source of growth, competitiveness, and cooperation. And right now, as we all know, that competition is no more based on businesses. Competition is based on supply chain. Like supply chain is the major competition right now. So we'll be having Professor Mohamed Ali Uku, then Dr. Brandley Fortin, Dr. Bob Tojasik, and Mr. Tom Tillemans, and Mr. Ricardo Wiggins. So basically, we'll just have them introduce themselves just briefly. So we go first by, okay, Professor Ali Uku, please introduce yourself to our attendees.
We are live now?
Yeah, we are live now.
Okay, sorry. I was just putting my charger. All right. I'm Mohamed Ali Ülkü. I go with Ali, the shorthand for it. I'm a professor in the Rowe School of Business at Dalhousie University, and also I have founded and I've been directing the CRISCA, which is a short name for Center for Research in Sustainable Supply Chain Analytics. It's the only center particularly focusing on analytics and sustainable supply chains in the world, and it's coming along well. I have been teaching courses on, of course, in supply chain management, logistics, trade and transportation, and operations management, and quantitative models throughout my career. My research is on sustainability and supply chains. More particularly, the branches of my research program will fall in what I will say green logistics policies, particularly on shipment consolidation, and customer returns, product return policies, and consumer behavior, um, service design, and recently more on new technologies and supply chain sustainability are the new branches of my research. One particularly is on big data and supply chain management, and I have co-edited a book on big data and supply chain management theory and applications that was recently published in Taylor and Francis. So that's me, and I like research, working with good students, and I like my field a lot, and I'm very fervent about it. So you will have to stop me if I talk too much. So I'll try to keep it less. All right, thank you. And by the way, Khadija, it's on your behalf, I'd like to congratulate you and your team for organizing a scientific networking event like this. And this is great, especially under the conditions that we're going through, the pandemic and all. It's extremely hard to organize these events, I know. So my heartfelt congratulations to you. Yeah, very well done.
Thank you, Dr. Olku. Thank you so much. We're so glad to have you with us today.
Thank you, Professor Uku. We're very glad to meet you, and we look forward to learning from you extensively in the conference. So
Sure.
going next is Dr. Brantley Fortin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brantley. I'm CEO at Lamar IoT, and Lamar is a cold chain logistics packaging company. We're focused in three key industries: pharma, food, and cannabis. And we're really interested in providing end-to-end temperature tracking solutions. So, we really think about, this good has some step where it begins at a manufacturer and then arrives at some final end destination. And we really want to be able to track those goods in transit in real time and provide those temperature and condition metrics to showcase any damages or excursions that might happen and notify suppliers in real time to be able to cut costs as well as reduce waste. I'm also an EIR, which is an entrepreneur in residence at Remus Capital, which is an early stage venture capital firm. And Remus is based in the Boston area.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, Dr. Bradley Fulton. So we'll be going to Dr. Bob Pujasic now.
Okay,
Can we
thank
meet
you.
you, Doctor?
I'm Bob Pujasic, and I've worked in supply chain back when it wasn't popular, probably the late 1980s and throughout the 1990s. I usually worked for very large retail companies like Walmart, the big store, and you know, a lot of stores around the world. And what they wanted me to do is go into their supply chain and see whether they were doing something called pollution prevention, or the prevention of pollution, which was very popular in the 1980s and 1990s. And so we went around at 26 countries I got involved in, and just walked in. And the thing I found was amazing is even though the workers didn't know anything about pollution prevention, they knew how to do it, but they wouldn't do it. The managers didn't know about these things. So because I would ask a worker when they were doing something wonderful, how did you know about this? You tried it before, haven't you? And they said, we wouldn't have shown it to you if we hadn't tried it before and knew it worked. So then I had to sort of introduce the management to learn to talk to the employees a lot. They had a lot of knowledge that wasn't in the management of the smaller supply chain companies. I actually serve now on a supply chain certification company in Canada called VCARE, VCARE Academy, and they do certifications, and I'm on the certification board. So whenever they come up with a new certification, I have to grill them on it and make sure that it's going to work. Currently, I'm the managing director of the Center for Corporate Performance and Sustainability, and we're working in this area. We're looking at sustainability at the corporation, at all the operating facilities of the corporation, and the supply chain. And a lot of people are trying to do supply chain sustainability by using purchasing and training purchasing to make sure they're doing it. And I've been working in that area. And then I've been teaching what I call organizational sustainability. So how organizations themselves, including supply chain people, do sustainability. I teach it online at Harvard University here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I've been doing that for the last 19 years. So this is not a new topic, but people keep on rediscovering it as it goes along. And of course, that course has been seriously upgraded over the years. So I spend a lot of my time on what I call process improvement, and using quality tools and using ISO standards, the environmental, health and safety, energy management, and social responsibility. ISO now is working for the group of 20, the top 20 leaders in the world, and they're helping them put more standards in, and we're trying to get in this whole field, see much more in the way of management system standards, which had changed dramatically in the year 2012 with a high level structure. So ISO now has what's called the Guide for Sustainable Development, and the Guide for the world problems that are going on as well, climate change.
Thank you, Dr. Bob Pujasic. It's a pleasure to meet you, and we look forward to learning extensively from you as well. Okay, we would love to meet you, Mr. Tom Tillemans.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Tom Tillemans. I've been, I'm originally, I've studied business economics and then a master in transport and logistics. Then I went over working for different supply chain functions and logistics functions within fast-moving consumer goods. On the production side of things, not on the retail side. Since 2008, I've been incorporating sustainability in the supply chain. Since 2017, I've been an independent supply chain consultant, and now started as co-owner of another company, Sustaining Supply Chains, to help companies, really sustaining their supply chain. We've developed a survey, a methodology that links basically the ambition of companies versus different maturity levels that they're having from an organizational perspective, I'm saying it incorrectly in my English. So from a governance perspective, processes perspective, and also resources perspective, then we plot the companies against the maturity and where they position themselves, and then we help them to develop a roadmap to improve their sustainability.
All right, good. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise.
Yeah, can we meet Mr. Ricardo?
Thank you. Thank you a lot for the invitation to the Hassania School of Public Works and the Forum of EHTP-Entreprises. My name is Ricardo Weigand. I'm from Mexico. I'm currently doing a PhD in circular economy and foresight. I previously worked 10 years for Heineken Mexico. I was part of the strategy team that made the strategy for Heineken Mexico to become the first company in Mexico that was part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I'm very happy to be invited here. I was in Morocco 6 years ago, and I had the chance to visit Casablanca, Marrakesh, and Fez. And I have great memories. So when I received the invitation to this event, I happily accepted as I had a great time there. And I have a friend that particularly loved the city of Fez in Morocco. So yeah, I'm happy to contribute to my background on supply chain and on circular economy. That it's my passion and it's what I'm doing my research about.
It's a pleasure to meet. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
So briefly, we're going into. There's a question I want to ask Dr. Bradley, which is there a disparity between sustainability and circular economy? Because I believe it would be an expository time to know if there's a difference between sustainability and circular economy. Dr. Bradley.
Yes, I think that's a really interesting question, right? And one that comes up oftentimes, I think, is this idea around circular economy. I think the first question that you have to ask is, does every market or every industry vertical kind of lend itself to a circular economy? I think is the first way to think about it. When you think about sustainability, I think we're just starting to think of that, and as well as supply chains, as less linear models and more circular models. So I do think there's some interplay between the two. But for instance, you might be able to create a complete circular economy in, let's say, the food industry. But it might be harder in a market vertical like pharma. But there's still waste mitigation and sustainability aspects that you can implement in that space. And so while I do think the two have linkages, I would say that there are differentiators between the two as well. And this kind of idea of circular economy, I think we're increasingly pushing the envelope towards having market verticals that reflect that, but it's still a challenge, right, to have something that's completely circular, or an economy that is completely zero waste or zero emission from the raw material step all the way to the end of use life goods. So that's kind of my take on how the two are similar and differentiate themselves a bit.
Okay, Dr. Bob, we are going to ask you that in today's take, make, waste economy is usually wasteful, and its shortcomings are becoming more apparent by the day. So what's special about circular economy, and how can we face the waste issues? Dr. Bob, did you hear that? Did you get the question? Is the Robot still on? Okay.
Robert, there was a question for you.
Oh, that was for me. I was just asking. Okay. So for us in the work I do now, the circular economy has many varieties and everybody defines it differently. There's almost, I think I went on Google one time and found something like about 100 groups that are supposedly the group that you should go to. Waste that companies have pretty much comes from processes where you're, the way you can deal with it is you just remove the offending input that is causing the waste to be a waste or to be a hazardous waste or waste you need to be concerned about or not recyclable, and change the process. You can eliminate or reuse waste. They refer to it as scrap. And we believe that recycling on the waste level hierarchy is unacceptable. You have to be above recycling because recycling creates new waste and recycling uses a ton of energy, and they're not accounting for the energy in most of the cases. Oh, well, we don't bother with the energy. Well, the energy is creating other waste where it's being generated. So you do need to account that. So in the year 2000, so I was working in this field called, then you find processes for the scrap waste. So that's recycling. But recycling is sort of a last resort. The recycling is not something you really want to do because you can't avoid in recycling using an awful lot of energy. So in the year 2001, I wrote a book for the United States Environmental Protection Agency, was trying to do pollution prevention and eliminate waste. It's called the Organizational Guide for Pollution Prevention, published in August 2001. In 2005, I published another book called Making the Business Case for Environmental Health and Safety Standardization, and it included pollution prevention as well. And then we're doing the same thing now in the Center for Corporate Performance and Sustainability. We're rewriting these guides. We're going to publish them later this year. And basically what you do is you do a hierarchical process map, and you figure out where all the processes are, all the supporting processes, all the ancillary processes like watering the grass, watering the trees, that's still waste. You're probably using way too much water when you're doing that, and the water is needed by other people in the community. So the whole idea of pollution prevention comes from process improvement. It comes from the quality industry, and mainly from ISO 9001, where the companies would try to have greater quality and they would change their process, and waste included the waste you throw away and things like that. And, you know, I'm thinking of something like a spray painting job. Is most of the paint does not get on the part you pay. It's overspray, and it goes through filters and makes everything else dirty. So they came up with the powder paints, the dry paints, and they're in a like fog, and the fog is going around, and they move the part through the fog with a little bit of a charge to it to pick up the particles, and then they put them in an oven which heats only the surface with infrared. It doesn't heat the whole part. And then they put a little vacuum cleaner in, vacuum up all the material that's left, and use it to paint the next object. There's no human exposures. You know, we've eliminated 100% of the waste in the process, and it's so remarkably easy to do. And again, as I said in my introduction, that many employees already know how to do these things. You really have to work with them, and we work with employee teams, teach them about the process mapping. And the one thing I always like about process map, these hierarchical maps are like three-dimensional maps that come down, and they're very, very useful because you can see all the connections in them. And when I show it to the employee, they say, wow, that looks like a map of the process. Looks great, but it's wrong. And I said, well, show me what's wrong about it. And they spend a whole day showing what's wrong. I said, that's how we're going to solve the problem. So we really think the workers are really, and of course now, I've taught that in school at Tufts University, at Harvard School of Public Health. So I know the process works well, and it just seems the circular economy stuff is still complicated by a lot of different things and that sort of stuff. And maybe by revisiting the past and bringing that into we'll get it to work a little bit better. That's what I'm hoping. Thank
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bob. How can companies build an economy that is restorative and regenerative by design? How do you think we can put in place circular economy into the company's processes to build a restorative and regenerative designs?
by handling it by design instead.
Yeah, by design. Yeah, how can
Yeah,
companies build an economy that is restorative and regenerative by design?
yeah. The design works very well as long as you have a map. So what we do in the map is you can only have 6 boxes at the most. You can't have more than that. So in 3 to 6 steps, you tell what the whole process does. And then if one box has 3 or more subs, you break it down into that and then break it down. And so the employees now start looking for the waste, start saying, we know how we can eliminate this waste. Let us show you. Because sometimes you need, with a customer, you need to get that approved before you can do it. And which is very important. So we're not trying to break any rules. And then the employees get a reward if they can eliminate the waste in there. And the employees always like that. They have competitions among the employees to eliminate the waste and things like that. But in many cases, they're cheating because they know how to do it. And I said, why haven't you told the managers? And they said either the managers had never asked us before, is usually what it is. And I'm saying shame on them. They should be talking. They should know what the process is. They should be talking to the employees and that sort of stuff. And it was taught in schools. So there were people that were back again in the late 1980s in the United States, in the early throughout the 1990s. There were people that were trained in it. And they haven't been brought into the circular economy. I'm sure that's a two-way problem, and I don't think they know about each other. And maybe I'm hoping in this talk that I can reintroduce some of the work that was done in that time, because I had over 50 journal publications on pollution prevention and about 50 journal publications on sustainability now. But those are in journals that probably most people don't read. So we're trying to popularize it and bring it in so people can use it. It's just common sense in most cases.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor
Thank you.
Ali. This question is for you, sir. In a market where non-recyclable and hard to recycle materials are very easy to find and sometimes cheaper, so how can we convince new businesses, more business, to choose the recyclable materials?
Thank you, Kamikun. I see the solution to that, contrary to intuition, to be very simple. From the consumer side, if you don't buy the product, there won't be the business. So consumption is the driver for production, right? So as Dr. Pozashek was mentioning, recycling, and I emphasize that in my research and in my classes as well, is the last resort. So that's a very bad or wrong, I should say, impression that when you recycle, you feel good. But actually, the rate of recovery from recycling is, for some products, almost insignificant at all, and the energy used for recycling is horrible, to say the least. So it's defeating its own purpose. So we have all these famous R's which make public more aware, if you will. And I know that from my daughter, who's going to grade 5 in Canada now, and they learn all these R's too, which is awesome. The young generation is way more cognizant, at least compared to my generation, about environmental issues and sustainability, which is excellent. So if you go back to the R's, the first R, and you can find thousands of variations of this, will be, say, rethink. So when you're purchasing a product, you have to think whether it's worth buying. Do you really need it, and so on. And refuse. You can refuse to buy the product and continue with what you can have, with what you have already, or you can find an alternative substitute for it, right? And then it will be repurposing or reusing what you have, and finally it will be recycling. So there are ways that we can make the most out of what we have already. But for some products, And this is where I get in conflict with marketing and product design issues as well. And some of my research, I published a few pieces on modular design, modularity, and I think that that will tie well with circular economy too. Modularity in product design, modularity in use, and even more so maybe modularity in process design, like how you produce a modular product, and you want to modularize the process that you produce that product, right? So it's um, if the consumers are given the option to choose among more sustainable friendly products, and when we use the word sustainable, or I at least I mean not just the triple bottom line, the famous Elkington's triple bottom line that focus on economy, environment, and society, but more the quadruple bottom line. And I recently published with a colleague in the Encyclopedia for UN SDGs, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is the world's biggest encyclopedia now on this issue, and it's a live encyclopedia, a reference book. Um, and so the fourth pillar for systemic culture, which is becoming more and more important, especially when you think of how the population of the world is growing unsustainably, and more so at urban areas. It's like the demand that's uh, the, the unsustainable demand, the unsustainable consumption that's coming on us is making maybe some businesses more hungry to exploit um, um, non-renewable resources, and generally you will find them say at reserves, tribal lands, and so on. More particular for example, northern parts of Canada, right? And that includes fishing too, right? So uh, or say for gas transportation, right? Pipelines, you want to find the most economical way that's going through a reserve land. It's not just um harmful to the society. I mean, the way that say the pipeline is built, or the roads are built for this increased trade, if you will, consumption going around. It's also killing off the cultures that are around. And cultures diversity is one of the few things as humankind we should stick to. So that pillar of sustainability is quite important. But overall, yes, we have all these. I guess just going back to the question, it's uh, number one, the companies they should produce sustainable alternatives, and I'm uh, well, at least I know from my students, they're way more aware on sustainability issues, and they will choose green products if the price is right, and if the accessibility is right, availability is right. So companies should be uh, having a deliberate intention to produce alternative products and replace non-sustainable products with those that are sustainable. And it's easier said than done. And I'm sure Rob has lots of experience how, especially Walmart, for example, could be used as an example where a big box retailer, the world's biggest retailer, anything Walmart does would be quite impactful on the other follow suitors, So there's more responsibility on big companies, and this shouldn't be just because of some governmental imperatives. So it has to come from the heart, maybe from the employers who know it very well. The solution is right there. You can listen to it straight from the horse's mouth. But um, so if the consumers are given the right options and they are aware that this is a reality that we have to go for sustainable consumption, I think that will be the first thing. So we have to be more aware of the impact that the products we are consuming half of them, I think that Dr. Fulton is related, his work is related to this. Packaging is so bad that's I don't want to name companies now, but you will buy something and the packaging that comes with it, you're paying for the packaging essentially. Forget about transportation. It's just ridiculous. The plastic that comes out of a tiny thing, it just hurts. It just hurts. So when you recycle that plastic, if it is recyclable, you might feel good, but again, that's not good for in terms of what we could have done in the first place. So this connection between consumption and production has to be healed, has to go back to its original. I mean, we should just observe the nature. Biomimicry, for example, is coming along, and think about thousands of years ago, our ancestors, they didn't have packaging, all these plastics wrapped around, and they were living in harmony with the nature. So I think my point is there are ways to learn, and we have to. There's also responsibility on teachers and professors like us when the students come to classes to make this more to regurgitate this idea that sustainable consumption is the way to go, and we should put our hands under the rocks for whatever we can do. Um, it rests on the consumer. If we don't want it, if we protest it, if we want better alternatives, then we should go with the better alternatives. And the company who is not doing the sustainable way of doing things, they should just fade away as it should be.
All right, thank you, Professor Ali.
Yeah.
In developing nations where there's little knowledge about sustainability, and some companies take advantage of that to bring in non-sustainable products. So how do we drive the education? How do we drive the knowledge gap between that to make them know what is sustainable, so to make them not want non-sustainable materials? How do we make them know? What are the best strategies to educate consumers?
Well, again, it's as I was mentioning, I was giving the example of my child. I think this is in Turkish we have a proverb. It goes as ağaç yaşken eğrilir, means the tree will bend when it is young, like when it's growing. So it has to start from early ages. So we can go to primary school even for that. And I'm very happy to see, well, at least in Canada, that in the education system we have these knowledges are ingrained by practice as well. They do, recycling companies to start, recycling programs, nature programs, and so forth. So they're raising as more cognizant kids, and then they turn into more mature adults who have more confidence in getting things right. Um, and when it comes to university level, especially for business programs, I shouldn't say fighting, but I have been deliberately revising almost every year my course content in a way that it adds in, and this is not easy. Most professors, they will understand what I mean, but for the benefit of my students, and because most of them, they will be in the business schools, right? They will be MBAs, including my MBA students. They will be managers that their decisions will impact not only their lives, with promotions and this and that, but more so the employees that they work with, the environment, the reputation of the company, the cultures around, and so on. So we might think their impact is, when you give a decision, the impact is not so pervasive, but actually it can be. Um, so one thing is definitely the revising the course material. And for example, when I teach operations management, I have now more and more lectures on sustainable operations management. I'm about to develop a new course on sustainable transportation. right? Sustainable supply chains, and methodologically too. These are more challenging problems because now you have multi-objectives in it. Remember the four pillars that we were mentioning before:
Yeah.
economy, environment, society, and culture. And
Culture, yeah.
economy is the easier one to quantify because it's in accounting books. Essentially, you have your costs, you have your profits, and so on. And please stop me if I'm going above my time because this is this is a mouth-watering subject for me. But and then comes environment. We are getting better in environmental assessments and quantifying, the impacts, and especially like Rob was mentioning, Tom, all the speakers over here, they're contributing a lot in this domain. Then societal impact becomes less quantifiable, so it becomes more difficult, and cultural impact the same level. So from a management, from an optimization perspective, it's easier to just simply focus on some hard numbers that comes from accounting books. But we had to go beyond. So that means that as a person of optimization, and with my background in industrial engineering, I would say that technical challenges has to be also taught in the courses at MBA schools, MBA programs, or business schools or engineering and so forth. So it has to be current. The material has to be current. If you're teaching a material that's 20 years old and it's totally away from what the kids are, I mean, I shouldn't say kids, it's students are thinking about, there's such a disconnect. It's not going to bode well.
Yes.
So it comes challenges, but we all have a stake in this, and we all have um, responsibilities. And hopefully COVID-19 is maybe that's one of the silver uh, lining of COVID-19. I would say it's bringing people together from different areas, and especially in research. Like think about this conference. It will be very unlikely maybe to meet with all these wonderful colleagues over here, but now we can do this online and which will turn into very fruitful relations down the road. And we can reflect more on the impact of maybe we are learning how to be more doing more with less, as it should be, right? While
Yeah,
we are
yeah,
all locked down. So, there are good things that might come. It's a part of education, but nature is educating us, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's forcing. And
Especially,
one more thing on that, people generally they talk, oh, when we will go back to normal, when we will go back to normal. I don't want to go back to normal. I think the normal we had was was not good. It was terrible, if I may say. So I want to go forward to a better situation, and all of us academics, practitioners, and as simply as a consumer, as a human being, a part of a society, we all have stakes and responsibilities in this. So better forward. Let's put it that
thank
way.
you,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Bob, companies switching into recyclable materials, it could probably have an effect on the quality and the price of the good. So how do you think company should undo that? How do you think they should undo that? The compromise between quality, cost, and them
Okay.
switching to recyclable materials.
Yeah, I mean, my belief is now that the big stores, the Walmarts and the big stores, the Amazons, or the big stores of the whole world, are they want to check on the suppliers all the time to make sure that the suppliers are doing the right thing or what they're supposed to be doing. And the suppliers, like everyone else, want to make money. They want to make good products, but they don't like to be told what to do when they think they know what their product is best. So I think we really have to stop. I mean, we have to take a step back and really stop about having, as I said before, having an audit where you're not auditing a particular program. You're just auditing the supplier. Of course, you can find a lot of things are wrong. I watch people make a jackets, winter coats using a certain material, and some of them were first class, high quality. Some of them had to be thrown away. And what it was, when you held the fabric up to the light, you could see big light holes in it. The fabric was not woven very well. And if they just wove the fabric, it was going to be more expensive, of course, but they weren't going to throw anything away. And so there's this whole learning that goes on. And, you know, what we're hoping at the Center for that I work with is to, with this new publication, get people to go all the way back to the beginning and think through what they're doing, map it out, debate it among the workers. And some of the workers, by the way, are very young. And they are the best judges of these things. There's absolutely no question. I like to get a maintenance person on there, because the maintenance person is the only person who's seen all the machines, what they look like on the inside when they break. They know how those go. I want an internal supplier, an internal customer, and I want one person on the team. I have an odd number, 5 people on the team who knows nothing about the process. Knows nothing about it, and they're the most critical. I mean, they'll say, "Why are you doing it this way? Why did you do this?" and that sort of stuff. So I think, you know, these are old quality methods, all back in the 1980s, and they really work. And we've given them up thinking they were bad things to do. That, you know, we get training, but, you know, it's really hard to give our students common sense training. And matter of fact, sometimes our students give us that training. You know, so. Yeah, that's sort of a long way of doing things, Professor Pajasic. You know, why don't you just do this? Oh, great. I never thought of that before. That's always the answer. But there's always the first time you can try and go back to it. So
thank you.
Just
Thank you.
On the auditing, there's a new thing out now. It's called self-determination and self-declaration. It's a process you can go through to do your own auditing, and it's better than the old auditing. And we really got to get more people to learn those tricks, where they, because people are very critical of themselves sometimes more than other people are of them. So
thank you very much. Thank you very much. So to Dr. Fortin, what are the other disadvantages of incorporating sustainability standards within the sourcing processes? Dr. Fortin.
Yeah. You know, I think one of the things, and this is something that comes up in conversation a lot, you know, as we're developing our business, and you know, so we're using IoT-enabled devices inside of our packaging, right, to be able to track these goods in real time as they move throughout the supply chain. And something that's really interesting, and I think and fascinating to us, is that, you know, you notice a lot of the energy and sustainability and environmental requirements in you know, in Europe, you know, for instance, it's I think further advanced than places like the US and even, you know, developing countries elsewhere. And so, you know, one of the things for us, right, and when you have, you know, electronic components and you're trying to come up with, well, what's the right material classification for our packaging solutions? You know, how do we move away from hard toxic plastics? How do we move away from, you know, things that are needing to be recycled, which we know is a, you know, a high energy intensive process? One of the key aspects is, I think, the need, you know, for federal or governmental legislation, you know, to help aid in this process. And so one of the things I think that would help, particularly, you know, here in the US, is if there were stricter environmental policies around recyclability, reusability, biodegradability of processes, because, you know, one of the things is that it, you know, without the legislation, right, it's hard to just get companies to create these packaging solutions or get consumers, you know, to want to adopt these methods, right, without that incentive. And, you know, even inside of our own company right now, you know, and I think this is kind of a great platform or a great place today. You know, we've been having this intense debate about, you know, recyclability versus reusability, you know, of our smart, right, packaging solution. And, you know, they lead to completely different business models. You know, on one hand, you say, well, this end consumer, if if it's their job, right, to dispose of this or recycle that, well, you know, that's on them. There are companies out there that use reusability models where the packaging, you know, goes all the way back to the origin. And so, you know, how can we, you know, think about, I think more of those models that will help us, you know, kind of lead better lives kind of towards this circular economy aspect. But, you know, and even being right, completely honest in knowing that the packaging that we're making has electronic devices, even small devices, right? There's the threat or the fear, or, you know, we also ask ourselves a question, well, are we adding additional, you know, electronic waste to the supply chain? Or how do we make sure that we aren't perpetuating or creating a new problem by trying to, you know, solve an existing or an old problem? So, you know, I think the space is so interesting. I think we're also really excited about it because there's few absolutes, right? And there's a lot of trade-offs, and it's really kind of, you know, how do you work through the right set of trade-offs to kind of get to these more robust answers. Certainly things like mimicry and, you know, I think biodegradability, as that continues to advance, I think will be something that that truly helps us create this you know, circular economy of the future that I think we all really envision or have an idea for.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fortin. Mr. Ricardo, this question is for you. In the future of work, you know, there are new dynamics, and we believe that some jobs will be lost while some opportunities will be created. So in your opinion, what are the jobs you think that might be lost, and what are the opportunities that you feel might be created? Mr. Ricardo.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think in terms of job creation, analyzing the value chain, I can think of at least new R&D centers to innovate on materials, strong supply chains that have also strong reverse logistics, and the subsequent teams that need to be built around this. Specialized business developers and specialized sales teams on business models that are in a circular economy framework. Circular economy specialists, of course, financial teams that have developed the language around circularity, that can think also not just in terms of profit, but also on the impact on CO2 emissions, water mitigation, job creation, equality, equity. Teams that know how to calculate life cycle assessment, total cost of ownership within the organization. Strategies that can come up with different scenarios of how the future can challenge us. So circular economy specialists focus particularly on profit, others particularly on people, and others particularly on planet. And of course, designers that can come up with solutions on how can waste can be designed out. So, I mean, in terms of what type of jobs we will lose, I think is irrelevant by the numbers of jobs that will be created. Of course, there will be a transition, and those unlucky that have jobs that they will lose, well, of course, they will need to learn new capabilities, and the organizations in itself need to develop those capabilities and help the employees to develop that and to educate on that regard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ricardo. Mr. Tom, this question is for you. You know, this circular economy is fast emerging globally, and then companies and governments are recognizing its potential to tackle the climate crisis, and, you know, while generating new and better growth opportunities. So what is circular economy's value creation potentials for investors, banks, and other financial services firms?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of money available in this world that needs and wants to go into everything that has to do with circularity, right? So if you look at investment firms who are focusing at it, ESG strategies, so really creating value from focus on the environment, from a social perspective, and governance aspects as well of different companies. So also banks giving loans against, let's say, better rates compared to if you are not a sustainable company or a circular company. So there is a lot of, let's say, potential to when you are an innovative company or you want to become innovative in this area of field, to really be supported by external investors. So it's a huge opportunity, I would say. All
right. Thank you very much. Dr. Fortin, how do you think a financial services firm can seize the circular economy opportunity?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one?
I said, how do you think financial services firms can seize the opportunity of circular economy?
Yeah, I think, to piggyback a little bit off what Tom was saying, I think particularly, in the venture capital space, here in America, there's a new administration and there is an energy, there will be, new renewable energy and circular economy focuses. I think the clean tech space, particularly in venture capital, is something that it existed before, I think around the 2010s, and I think the recession kind of probably shook up the space a little bit. But now you see this emergence of clean tech companies, supply chain related investments. There was just a company I just was reading about earlier today. I think it's called, I think it's like Reverse Rabbit, and what they do, there's a big bottleneck problem, right, with Amazon. Well, sure, they can ship, goods out in 1 or 2, business days, right, with Amazon Prime, but this company is solving the solution on returns, right? So everything, right, can get to your door immediately, but just think about all of the items that someone purchased that they might want to return because it was the wrong size or it wasn't the exact product that they wanted or needed. And so when you think about all that's leaving the fulfillment centers at, in Amazon, how do all of those returned goods that need to be traded in for new goods actually get back to that facility? And so I think we'll continue to see, financial institutions, even places like, I want to say Morgan Stanley, they committed to a zero emissions financial models within their infrastructure. I think by 2030 or 2035, there's a big EV push also here in America, right, to have hybrid electric vehicles by 2035. And so, I think, again, when you have legislation and regulation that comes down at a state or a federal level, it then incentivizes, I think, both customers and as well as manufacturers of those products, to get on board to help kind of create that future. And so, this idea around circular economy and I think sustainability, it's not going away. I think we're just kind of scratching the surface of the future, especially as globalization increases.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ricardo, how do you think we can gain competitive advantage within a sustainable supply chain?
Sorry, I was on mute. First of all, by being the first one on taking the next step. Imagine if you are the first fast-moving consumer good company that start using sustainable and fully circular materials, and that you are able to communicate that effectively to your consumers without making any sacrifice price-wise. So new organizations need to be thinking on cost parity against traditional materials. So I think that instantly will increase the market share in the short run for these organizations. Also, it will give and grant organizations a license to operate. We are entering a global phase where the price of commodities will go up and also the scarcity of materials as well. So by making a transition, a serious transition to circularity, now you are basically preparing for difficult scenarios that will definitely change your operations soon. And circular economy is about designing out waste and seek solutions on how to use the residues of one process as food or input for other processes. So acting this way, you are also able to build more sustainable and resilient supply chains. In the moment of difficulties, this will, of course, strengthen your position and give you a competitive advantage against your competitors. However, thinking on the concept of competitive advantage in a circular economy world, I think that concept is obsolete. So companies must start to think in a pre-competitive terms, where circular economy minded companies, for example, share with each other their innovations, standardized components, packaging, and basically they share good practices. I love the example of that happened in Canada that maybe Dr. Ali knows about it, but basically the breweries in Canada organize themselves in a very pre-competitive mindset to standardize all their bottles. So even when they are competitors, because they realize that if they do that, they could share instead of exchanging or breaking the bottles of the competitor. So that brought, of course, advantages on that, but also for the consumer. So the consumer can give away the bottle in any place, and also on recyclability, for example. So that's a great example for me of how companies can share good practices. And of course, you want to be the first one, and you want to gain also brand equity and market share, and that's all right. But after you did that, and after you launch this innovation, okay, share that with the others. So the impact on the environment it's multiplied. It may sound idealistic, but I mean everyone wins, because in the end, if they don't do that, at some point water will be so scarce, glass, corrugate, metal, etc., etc.
Please put your mic on, Mr. Kamikun. We can't hear you.
Oh, really? I'm sorry. Professor Ali, this question is for you. So how can circular economy models help build supply chain resilience, especially in the face of crises like COVID-19?
That's a very, very large question, big question. Well, I think I hinted before, and that the COVID-19 is giving us headache for sure, but in a way it's creating awareness. For example, I always had a good interest in my supply chain courses, but this year it just skyrocketed. So because supply chains are everywhere and people, well, it's not the companies are competing, it's the supply chains that compete. And when you see how they're all ingrained in every type of for every type of product, we talk about healthcare supply chains for like PPEs, for example, um, pharmaceutical supply chains, cold chains that Dr. Fulton was mentioning, definitely the food supply chains. We all these basic, ba like either at the very basic level or for OEMs for more high-tech products. It's all around the world and on a global scale. Now COVID-19 definitely it's a pandemic, so it caused countries to shut down and maybe focus more on their own interests. In a way, I think this is created because, look, one of the, well, at the heart of it, with circular economy, you would like to definitely design, like a deliberate designing the waste out of it, as Ricardo was mentioning. And another one will be slowing down the consumption, slowing down the consumption. And the third one will be that I see as distinguished features of circular economy is shortening the supply chain. So with these lockdowns now, countries, they're trying to find the best ways to shortening supply chain means that you're producing locally, you're using your own resources, which will imply that which will have, of course, positive impact on employment as well. Um, so that's a good thing. All right. And but on a healthy, um, still you want to find a healthy mix of uh, internal versus external um, um, sourcing, if you will. Um, and that's how you want to build resiliency in your supply chains. So I would say and that's one of the current research I'm working on. What I call, well, it's been called in literature, but not has been well reflected in supply chain analytic models yet, is called glocal. So it's a combination of global and local. That way you can sort of diversify risk in your supplies. And by the way, if when you with circular economy, it's quite involved in the sense that now um, you're not just talking about what we call circular supply chains, but also circular industries. So just like the attendees over here, the speakers, we're coming from different fields, and we are trying our best to understand each other. And sometimes even in marriages, you don't understand each other even though you were married for 30 years, like. And now we're talking about people from, say, chemistry, from sociology, from psychology, medicine, business, math, computer science. But why do we need that? Because industries inherently they're different. Consumer packaged goods, petroleum, which is the or new clean tech industries, and electronics and food and all. So now we're talking about having it's like one's garbage is another's treasure sort of thing. So you need to understand not only your industry that you're in your sector that you're competing for as a supply chain, not a company, but you have to understand, at least you should have some connection with the other industry where you can get their waste and put it as an input or a resource for your own industry. So it's quite involved. Um, I'm working on a conceptual piece on circular supply chains, and it's these are quite nascent terms because while supply chain management, although it's I mean, we had different names for that, multi-attribute inventory management in 50s, 60s, many things that were there already. But supply chain management make it a more, I shouldn't say buzzword, but more accessible for managers. So that created some more accessibility, let's put it that way. And then comes now sustainability, which make things, most people they were thinking it as just CSR, corporate social responsibility, and whether you will voluntarily do it or disclose it, and so on. And Dr. Pozicek was mentioning um, self-declaration. That will be the ideal situation, but um, there are tons of ethical issues going around there. And today we are already talking about, like for example, IUU fishing. It's called illegal, unreported, un, uh, fishing, for example, that gets into your supply chains, not just only for fishing industry, but many industries. And the more you, the longer the supply chain, the more you will find yourself playing, or for lack of a better word, more insidious companies, if you will, who do, you know, greenwashing, which is a big issue when it comes to sustainable consumption, or pink washing and so on, the easier for them to play the blame game, the longer the supply chain. So that will be, say like, well, I didn't do it. It's my, you know, the tier 3 of my tier 2 supplier had did it. So that's where the accountability, sustainable sourcing is coming on, and everybody wants to. But on the other hand, if you close down your supply chain, which we call closed loop supply chains, which is I think the building block for circular supply chains within the circular economic context. Circular economy is the space, the, you know, the universe, and we're talking more specific. This will be the traceability of the product flow, traceability, visibility of supply chain will be increased if the supply chain is shortened, and circular economy will dictate that. Again, CE is becoming more um, uh, more active. The idea is, or it's more talked about now, if you will, compared to China, for example, which has started decades ago, before North America. Same thing with quality insurance, quality issues that started before in China or in Japan that came over to North America. It's the I think it will help. So I think this is a good time to think about how we can make more resilient supply chains with what we have. And sometimes the solution is simple. We just have to open our eyes and look around and talk to our employees, and and then they will give you some solutions. Why do you need to pay uh, more for buying local? Isn't there a way to make it cheaper because it was produced locally, right? Why all these extra add-ons are coming around? With one of my current research students, we're working on this, for example, and that will naturally build in some resilience in the overall supply chains that a country can have, right? So these are, uh, I think we should always be on the look and not just look on some predetermined solution, because these are not only complicated, but complex issues when it comes to supply chains, let alone supply chains. But in the setting of circular economy, it becomes even more. It requires interdisciplinarity, a holistic approach, and definitely special. It's both breadth and depth in the field. Um, Somehow we have to all communicate with each other in a way that
Yeah.
one's output is a good input to the others, and so on. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. And then, Mr. Tom, how do you think the elements of supply chain resilience can mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on firms' performance?
I didn't hear your question very well.
Okay, I said,
you
how do you
repeat?
think the elements of supply chain resilience can mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on firms' performance?
Yeah, I think we're those firms who were not prepared and didn't have other scenarios on the table were too late, right? So I think those companies that do not have by definition a resilient supply chain are being punished by the current COVID situation, right? So maybe in the consumer business, if you haven't, I mean, in the e-commerce business, right? I mean, look how the e-commerce business is flourishing at this moment versus, let's say, the more traditional retail. And if you are, I don't know, delivering to consumers, but you haven't got the basics in place, and basically delivering your customer and having the systems in place to provide an e-commerce service, you can forget it. So for those, I think, who were not prepared yet, I mean, they have very difficult times at this moment. Fortunately, there are governments also supporting those companies, so which will help them at least to survive for maybe 6 to 9 months more from now. And here in the Netherlands, for instance, companies are allowed to pay the taxes later, but at a certain moment of time, when they need to pay the taxes, then many companies will probably go bankrupt. So it's a big warning signal. that we all need to be rethinking on how the supply chain has been set up, how we can do it better. And what Mr. Ali Huko also said, yeah, go for shorter supply chains. So do not look at the other side of the world when you can buy it around the corner, right?
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Tom. So, Dr. Fortin, how do you think policymakers can help pave way towards a low carbon and prosperous future? Dr. Fortin.
Can you please repeat that?
I said, how do you think policymakers can help pave way towards a low carbon and prosperous future?
Yeah, I think one of the things, I think having, having policy that really, kind of lends itself to upholding circular economy ideals, waste mitigation, and these zero emissions, goals. One of the things here within the United States, right? California was the first state to say, well, hey, by 2035, we're only going to sell electric vehicles in the state of California. Then I believe after that, you saw Massachusetts adopt that. And, now I think it's well on its way towards, kind of a sweeping legalization, across America. And so it really takes, I think, either, local and state leaders to either influence or inspire federal leaders, or, for the federal governments to say that, hey, we want to introduce these sustainability and circular economy ideas. And because at the end of the day, that's what really, I think, pushes companies, and manufacturers of these products to really get on board, is, their true incentive is when the regulatory demands are so strict. And, when the compliance is so tough. And for us as, consumers or adopters of the technology, or, buying cars, or we even see it when we go in the grocery store, more people want to know where their food products come from. They want to source more local foods. And so, it's sometimes I think it's a kind of a chicken or, the egg, where it's, did the government influence the consumer, or did the, consumer influence the regulation? But I think it requires both to actually be working together in concert to actually give us these kind of circular economy and sustainability goals that we want.
Thank you very much.
And my second point, and this is particularly, I don't think this is just true in America, but I think this is something that we will also see, I think, in the future, is I do think that you will see, and maybe this is my own bias as a materials chemist, but I do think that you will begin to see more STEM majors in policy and in government, right? Really using these kind of critical thinking first principles, I think, is a future shift that we'll begin to see more and more. And so, having policymakers that are scientists, you'll then, get to see new environmental legislation and regulation, as a result. And so, I personally think that that's a good thing. And I think that that's something that not only here in the United States, but I think nations around the world, that will be a positive shift towards us working together in a more succinct way.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fortin. Mr. Dr. Bob, this question is for you. We found that environment and economic performance indicators are well established, but meanwhile, the indicators for social performance are very low. So what's the social dimension of sustainable supply chain management? How do you think it can be improved and worked on?
Yeah, one of the things we're finding right now, and it's a big thing, and it's worldwide, and most people don't know about it, is not too long ago, people were worried about accounting. So what they did is they put together some accounting standards. And this is the way you will account for things, and everybody will do it. And unfortunately, they were done by countries, and the standards weren't universal. So they decided is how do we regulate transactions, accounting transactions, the individual, and standardize them. And there's an organization called the IRFS Foundation. They're huge, and they set up what's called the International Accounting Standards Board a number of years ago, and all the accounting standards right now in 104, excuse me, yeah, in 400 is that right? Yeah, 400 and something countries are using the standards now. So they decided that they were going to do it. They did a sort of a process of going through it, of doing it for sustainability reporting and this wonderful business called ESG. And the investors like ESG because, you know, the whole idea when you're doing pollution prevention, you're doing all these things, you should be making more money and the ESG will be higher. The problem is there's over 600 different conventions of ESG and most of them are proprietary. So the big boy on the block is BlackRock. BlackRock only has 78 trillion US dollars investment right now. I mean, really small amount. Most countries don't have that amount of money in their bank. And what they decided is, gee, we should have maybe IFRS or somebody like that come and do the standarding. So, and all of the sustainability managers said, no, they don't know as much as us. We're sustainability managers. We know what to do. We can make this work. And so, and so when they did the consulting paper and then they do the thing and it has passed, the sustainability managers are completely silent on it. They didn't send in any responses. If you say that there's going to be standardized, you say you don't know what you're talking about, you're wrong. But this is going to be the best thing ever for them. So what's going to happen is the standards you're going to use for sustainability, the standards, everything you're talking about will always be the same. They will always be enforced and you can always have new ones. You can always have replacements. And it's going to be, I think it's called the Sustainability Standardization Board is going to be set up. And they're actually going to report this year at a very important meeting. It's in, I believe it's in Glasgow this year, and it's COP26. So for the environment, and I think they're going to present the first. They're going to present the first standards, and there are checks and balances in here. You can refute them. You can bring them to court. You can do all the things, but their job is standardization, and they don't do standardization in a vacuum. They go out and talk to people about, you know, what's the difference here. And the sustainability people all are in love with GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative. Absolutely love GRI. You know, I mean, it's almost obscene the way they handle it. Well, GRI is probably not going to have any of the standards. They have too many of them. They're not as sufficiently defined. And when you look at SASB, there's financial numbers associated with many of them. It looks like BlackRock likes Savvy. And when BlackRock likes something, many of the investors listen to them and do that. And I think it's going to be very interesting to when you move the whole ship. And some of you have talked about this already, either in local areas or regional areas, country areas. But this is international now, and everybody will have to use that standard, or they will not be allowed to do business. And it's only going to be for publicly traded companies. But the publicly traded companies are feeding the supply chain. So they're going to tell you what they want. And if you don't deliver what they want, you're not going to do business with them. So we're going to see some of this accounting of standards and things like that go down to the very low levels now. And this is not rocket science. You know, we've been doing these things for many, many years. And I think you get this this runaway thing when you have a new thing going, everybody's running and they don't worry about accounting. They don't worry about the thing. And that's the quantification. And that's what really makes everything go. And now we'll have accounting behind it. And, you know, accountants are very precise. I always tease my accountant every year. If I'm within 10 cents, within 10 pennies or something like that, I'm okay. They do it right to the penny for us, right to the hundredth of a dollar. And they will stay up many nights until they get it right there. And sometimes we need that. It's going to drive behavior when you know there's no, we call it wiggle room, where you can sort of wiggle away and get away from it in a certain period of time. So I think So beside the inventions on the side, and despite the changes in society, we really need some standards that are looked at all the time, they're brought up to date, they change when they need, and you need a group that's powerful. The IFRS has, I believe, formal relationships with those 410 governments. They don't do the United States right now because the United States has its own Securities and Exchange Commission that handles a lot of that. But I think what will happen is you're going to see some of that move and go to the accounting. So just as you guys have come up with all kinds of interesting things that we haven't thought about before, here's another one. And if we can just get them working together, life's going to be a lot better, I think.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So Mr. Ricardo, this question is for you. The pandemic has emphasized the wasteful nature of single-use plastic packaging rather. So as we combat the pandemic and shape a resilient economic recovery that also mitigates global risks. So a response is needed to ensure that plastics never become waste. Are there any innovative reuse solutions that can ensure that plastic never becomes waste?
Yes, thank you for the question. First of all, I'm not an expert on the plastic area. I'm more, or my experience goes more into trying to compete against corrugate, not against plastic. But what I have seen is that, of course, there are many solutions around plastic and bioplastics. However, most of the solutions that I have seen currently on how to cascade the plastic, the available plastic, don't differentiate between the plastic being a technical component rather than a biological component, and they try to find solutions by shredding the plastic and then, for example, building sport courts or cycling roads. So while it's a good intention what to do with so much waste of plastic, they are making the problem bigger. So one of the things that we must not forget as a school of thought that circular economy got inspired from, such as biomimicry, is cradle to cradle. And the principle of cradle to cradle is don't mix biological and technical, but try them to keep them separated so both can circulate as much as possible. So I mean, that will be my answer to that. And if I still have time to give a little bit of my input to the previous question on the social indicators, I totally agree with Bob's answer. And last year we did a very brief analysis on all the circular economy frameworks available. And of course, they prioritize the economic and the environmental indicators. But we found one particularly from an analysis of the city of Porto in Portugal. And that was the only one that included social aspects. And I will just mention them briefly. Basic education quitting, digitalization, accessibility to smartphones, balance between women and men. What is the heaviest age group? What is the active population? What is the woman and men balance in politics? What is the income gap between rich and poor? And this can apply for cities, but also for organizations. How much the CEO earns against the lowest ranked? What is the percentage of middle class? What's the economic mobility? What is the life quality index? And of course, in many countries or in many organizations, what is the perception on corruption? So I mean, I'm throwing this because if we start to include them, at least we will start to narrow what are the most important ones, and we can start to measure. And CEOs can present this in the CSRG reports, or mayors can start showing this in to citizens in general.
Your mic is on mute.
Professor Ali, you seem to be against recycling. So we would like to hear your perspective on any innovative solution we can have around plastic waste. Professor Ali.
Okay, thanks, Kamikun. Well, just to be clear, I'm not against recycling. I'm just saying I'm discouraging recycling compared to better options before. So if you can repurpose and reuse it, elongating the life of the product should be the goal from sustainable production perspective. And we earlier talked about some issues related to obsolescence. So unfortunately, there is again, this is from more marketing perspective, to some level from marketing perspective, to building in obsolescence into the product. So think about your iPhone, Android, whatever that is. Maybe you have version 20 and then it will be version 30. I don't know. I'm not an iPhone user. I'm against cell phones in the first place, but so it's these are all done deliberately so that you upgrade and then you pay more and so on. And when it comes to upgrading, that takes us to modularity, one of my research. And modularity becomes more it's costlier to do at the first time, but once you design it well and get things rolling, it will become um, you can do scale economies and you can save up on things, and that will reflect, of course, on costing for the consumers. So now getting back to plastics, and recyclability, for example, could be, if it's a last resort, but it could be still built in the product in a way that it's now easier to disassemble the product, and those parts could be reused for some other for manufacturing other products, right? So whenever an industry's waste output is could be used as and I said that before, it is a good input to another industry in circular economic sense, then it has to you, we have to make sure that the product is designed from cradle to cradle, to just like Ricardo was mentioning. So there's a deliberate uh, design architecture behind the product, where at the end of the life of the product, which hopefully it will be as long as possible, right? Then the product could be easily disassembled and used for some other purpose in the other industry or in the next supply chain. Again, I'm not an expert on plastic recyclability, but we know that it's uh, I mean, more. I know aluminum is the one that's really sought after in recycling facilities, and this again relates to what Ricardo was saying about the standard packaging for brewing, which is the aluminum cans, is a very good example, and that's just not only good from sustainability easier recyclability perspective, but also from logistics perspective. So the transportation per unit transportation cost will be reduced, just like in flat packaging, right? So that will mean that the cost uh, the price that the consumers pay will be more affordable, right? And also it can attract younger generation too, because they think that they're benefiting from, well, they're contribute as if they're contributing. It's the warm glow effect. They're contributing to sustainability by not insisting on a bottle that looks like, some interesting shape or what, but they're just getting the same packaging. Um, for plastic, I know um, I mean, it's not good. We should get rid of plastic as much as possible, because it's It is using up non-renewable energy sources, oil, at the end of the day. If we can develop some better ways of a modular transportation, modular packaging in a way that's biodegradable or just simple, right? I remember when I was a kid back in Turkey, we would go get milk in jars from the grocery store, where it's served in a cold. Think about it like you go some restaurants and you can fill up your drinks, pop, and all those nasty things, right? It's very accessible. Why don't we have that at the corner store? You go and just fill up your jug and get your milk. Why? Why not, right? So there are some basic ways, or you can just use your jars. I think Bulk Barn is doing it now. You go and just use your jars to put your own nuts and beans and whatever you're buying. Um, but I would say, for example, in terms of that I remember reading it a few days ago. Companies, there are some new companies, and that's good prospect for economy as well. They call it green demolishing for houses, for example. When they when you demolish a house, generally it goes as landfill, all the parts in it, you know. But if you do it manually, and it will take slower, it will take longer time, but you can repurpose. You can mostly, I think, some companies they're doing it like 95%. This is becoming more of a thing in Canada and by laws as well, especially in the British Columbia, BC. You can recycle those parts in the house, and I think on average, just like a normal house, is producing about 100 tons of debris, and 95% of them to be reused, either as uh, um, either as reusing or recycling. 95% of that waste being diverted, right? Waste diversion is a great example. So, and Ricardo was mentioning again, the keyword is diversion. For plastic too, you can use it for making roads, for making I don't know, like swings and this and that. But those are good things. We are feeling good, but again, mind you, there's tons of additional energy. It's very energy intensive that is put on it. So I think maybe contrary to the thing that I heard most while I was in the United States, don't fix if it's not broken. I'm not saying that. Fix it. Fix it before it's broken. Not only broken, but before it hurts us as humankind. Because nature uh, doesn't have feelings. It's not going to be like, oh, I love humankind, so I will be nice to them. No, we have to we have to just be cognizant and prevent problems at the source as much as possible. So I think we have to be wise and smart and minimalist in the way we live, and just uh, rid ourselves of consumption and showing off, and lots of marketing techniques has to be gone away. And in terms of management, we have to, whether it's CEO or mid-management, whatever, we should focus on long-termism rather than short-termism in our own pockets.
Thank you, Professor. Yeah, thank you, Professor Ali. And Mr. Tom, what are the current research topics in the area of circular supply chain, and what is the status quo of circular supply chain research?
Yeah, what more in my area, right, which is logistics and supply chain. I mean, everything is about at this moment of time about fuel transition. I mean, especially here in Europe, but already also mentioned in the States, right? So, I mean, everybody is preparing for this transition here in Europe, mainly towards 2030, so not 2035, what I've heard. So it's not only the research, but really, yeah, now also, of course, the industry is moving over to the use of alternative fuels, and in the case here, it will be hydrogen probably. So a lot of research going on in this field here in Western Europe.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. So back to Professor Ali. The construction industry contributes 4 million tons of waste in Canada annually. The city of Vancouver has adopted new green demo bylaws restricting demolition and offering incentive for recycling and repurposing building materials for deconstructed homes. So, Professor Ali, what are the benefits of such hubs financially and environmentally, and how do you see the future of these hubs in Canada and around the world?
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I was alluding to it a little bit in your earlier question, but anything you can divert, anything you can get back into the reuse loop, in the closed loop, as opposed to throw it away in landfills is good. And that especially, of course, the construction business is not an exception for that. So and if you think about how especially for how our urbanization is skyrocketing, um, I think it's 70 or 80%. It's not on top of my head, but urban is the world will be urban. So everyone is moving for various reasons, including prosperity, the hope of finding a job and whatnot, from rural areas to urban areas. So that will require, especially older cities like in say Victoria or Halifax. We have that issue in here too. Uh, there are some big eyes. Um, um, Vulturing around some older houses, some even historic houses, some very um, um, lucrative places in downtowns to demolish them and put some developments, like huge skyscrapers or whatever, so that you can house more people in, right? So it's a dilemma. There are trades-off with that. But I guess my point is more and more we will find cities demolishing houses and building more space for people. Hopefully more accessible for people, more affordable as opposed to, you know, um, generally so far as I observe in Halifax, those buildings are going to the hands of the rich again. They're not built for accessibility, for affordability. I don't find them very helping in that sense. Um, and whatever you can recover from a demolished house or factory or whatever it is, a building is valuable because mind you, the energy, the resources, and we've been talking about say uh, carbon footprinting, right? We should talk about more on water footprinting because especially in construction industry, it's the amount of water wasted is huge. And same goes with irrigation too. One of our speakers was mentioning before. Um, and you want to take full advantage of some effort, some energy that has been used on a product. And I don't know if you can use the door again, use it. If you can use the glasses, you should use it, and so on. So um, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And from economic perspective, again, I think this will create jobs for people. Um, and I don't think it will be a very, high technical job where you manually uh, deconstruct. It's deconstruction essentially. Deconstruct a house slowly. Maybe you will find some treasure in that house too. Why not? So it will be good, yeah. I support it. It's a good example. I guess overall, when it comes to the issues that we're talking, circular economy, sustainable supply chain system, consumer behavior, sustainable consumption, production, and so on, we need good models. Just like in politics, we need good politicians, good models, role models in our lives too. So we need good examples of companies that we can aspire to. And I think this exercise or this company, these companies that are doing green demolishing, if you will, are good examples, and that will inspire others to go forward. Yeah, trailblazers, if you will. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Your mic is on mute.
Dr. Fortins, how do you think emerging technologies like IoT, blockchain can aid sustainable supply chain management? If you can give an example of how you've been able to see it happen in real life, it would be appreciated.
Yeah, no, there's companies popping up all over the place. Mine included, a shameless plug. But no, I think IoT devices, especially when you talk about sensors and mobile gateways in the packaging space in particular, and around transportation of goods as they move throughout the supply chain, I think can really actually help harness the power of increased supplier communication, right? And so one of the things that we've been finding, while building this company is, well, the manufacturer doesn't have a great relationship with the distributor, and this distributor, takes a product to multiple warehouses, and then the multiple warehouses go to multiple destination points. And in some ways, a lot of this communication is still kind of paper-based, where a truck driver is just given a stack of information about what this truckload is, right? And really has no true way to check the integrity of the goods. And so I think one of the things that systems like IoT devices, and then when you think of what the data analytics can actually do in terms of the terminology that is often used in blockchain and similar decentralized systems, chain of custody, really allows this increased supplier communication, so that, well, if I'm the manufacturer and it's in a distribution, and my product is in a distribution warehouse's hand, I don't have to constantly be asking the question of, where are my goods? What is the condition of the goods? If I'm that final receiver, and let's use a kind of a food as a use case here, if I'm that grocery store, that Albertsons or Ralph's or Whole Foods, I'm not asking the question of, well, when is this shipment of vegetables or whatever that good is coming in, will it be on time? Will it be will it have the proper condition? And so IoT devices, as well as the data logistics platforms, I think will allow that information to be streamlined, I think ultimately creating kind of new efficiencies within the supply chain. Now, someone had mentioned earlier, I think just introducing more IoT in these types of infrastructures into the space will also generate and create new jobs, right? Now, even as autonomous vehicles, move onto the scene, well, now truck drivers, right, and they're not completely fully autonomous. In the trucking side, truck drivers still have to understand, right, and learn the controls. And so, getting people that may not have had technical scopes or technical skills, getting them that expertise, I think makes them more robust employees, for your business organization. But, it's something that even we see currently right now with the vaccine rollout. Pfizer, they created this container that was supposed to use less dry ice, because we're having a global dry ice shortage to be able to meet the demand of all of the vaccines that need to be shipped over the world. And one of the things that they have within their packaging is this sensor, provided by this company Sensitech, which allows you to know exactly the temperature of the vaccines as they're being transported, all over the globe. And so, we think about, right, how critical that is, especially in a time right now, right? We're in a pandemic. People are fearful, all over the world. The last thing that you need, is I'm standing in a line at a CVS, I'm waiting, to be vaccinated, or even at my healthcare provider, and they ran out of vaccinations, and there's a line of 100 people. So the way in which you I think mitigate a lot of that is through IoT and chain of custody. I think the big question about circularity, I think in general, is the whole purpose of a circular economy is really how do we create transparency across the supply chain and across suppliers. And so I think that's one of the things that we're going to continue to see as more IoT devices get enabled into the supply chain, as well as these data analytics models that use technologies like blockchain that are really good at keeping chain of custody across amongst all suppliers.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fulton. It's been a great learning section, and we are soon going to round off. But before we round off, we want each one of you, our speakers, to give your ending words. And it's very important that youths are involved in sustainability, and it would be great if we could hear your word of encouragement and probably to drive youth to be involved in sustainability. And then if you could just share some few other tips you want to share. We have just a few minutes to go, and I think 2 minutes per speaker will be good. And we should start with Dr. Pojesic.
Okay, thank you. I was listening to these things, and there's so many great ideas, but there's a thing here in Massachusetts. I think it's all throughout the United States. It's called the Restore, RESTORE, the Restore, and it's things from homes that are being demolished. They bring them to the Restore and they try to sell them. And what they do is they get a lot of old toilets in. And who wants to buy an old toilet? So they get an artist to paint something on it. And now you got a piece of artwork that you use as a toilet also. And they also if they take a photograph of what it looks like in the house, they get an extra 10% off the sale they just had. And I mean, this thing is just brilliant. And there's lines of people trying to get in the store all the time because the artists have picked this up as a way to make some money on some of the things. So they're going and finding the thing, painting them, and then delivering them to the store. And they're on contract to do so many per year. And so I think, again, that's a really old thing. I mean, I think that those restores were in the 1980s. And I think sometimes we have to look backward to look forward. And there's really so much to be learned. And could I do that over again? As far as the instruments go, my son moved to London. There's a big biotech venture firm over there that he's doing very, very well. And he had one of those devices in his cargo thing on the boat going over, and they knew what port they were in. And the kids woke up. We have 3 lovely grandchildren. They woke up every morning. Okay, where's our stuff right now? Where's my bicycle? And it's in this port, or there's a storm at sea, and they're talking about that. So I think that many of you talked about the participation of younger people. And boy, they can really thought, well, why can't we do this? Well, the answer is you probably can. There's probably someone that's going to do it, or you can do it when you're ready. So I think it's a matter of not looking forward, not looking in a certain direction, but learning how to look back. It's life in the rearview mirror. I think sometimes is a good thing. And then to say, why not? That's what entrepreneurs do. They say, why not? Why shouldn't we all be saying that? I mean, instead of talking about the problems of the circular economy, talking about the problems of waste and stuff like that, why do we have to have this waste in the first place? And I told you these companies, I had one janitor was on my team. I told you I wanted 5 people. He was the one that didn't know a lot of what was going on. And he was about, I'm going to say a 6'7" black person, really wonderful, wonderful guy. And his name was James Bond, honest to God. And every time I'd go up to him, you know, I'd say, "Hi, James." And he'd say, "Hi, Bob," you know. But he knew where all the waste was going because he empties the waste baskets every day. He was the most important person in the whole, and they actually started sending him to some of the other companies that they had, the other facilities they had. James Bond, you know, really was doing his inside job. So I think, you know, we can use some, you know, variety and do things, but we should be looking back, we should be looking forward, and we should be thinking about what we're doing now all the time so we can get the best mix of it. His microphone. Your microphone's off. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Bob. It's really great to learn from you, and it's really great to see how you come to support the youth. We are very, very devoted and committed to taking action towards sustainability. So it's a very great encouragement, and we would love to hear from Mr. Tom. Encourage the youth and also share your ideas and how you feel we can combat this and face this climate crisis and other sustainability challenges.
Yeah, I think we all need to pick up the glove, and if you haven't started working on it, do it, and go away, especially here in Europe, from an I culture. It's all about me, into an us culture. And I think when you start living more sustainably at home, and you are in a certain, you're in your job, then also display it in your daily job. So I think everybody has the obligation to make this step now. I think it gives a lot of energy, positive energy. It's positive energy, and it also gives a good feeling. So it goes hand in hand. So just do it, I would say, and yeah, you will not regret it.
You're on mute.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Tom. Mr. Ricardo, can we hear from you, please?
Yes, well, thank you so much for the invitation, and for the students and for the next generation. It's just to invite them to don't think it twice and go for the majors or for the master's degrees, for the PhDs that are circular economy or sustainability related. And I think there's right now, and there will be a big market for that, and a big need. And so you can learn economics, or you can learn finance in a in a short course, but I think these are the subjects that are needed, and from any field, architects, innovators, designers, engineers, or people that are related with policies for political science. So this is my invitation. I enjoyed this conversation with every one of you. I learned a lot. I took notes of terms that I never heard before. For example, the pink watching, I never heard it before. I already looked it up. So yeah, I enjoyed so much, and I hope also our guests enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ricardo. It's really a great pleasure to learn from you and to share with your fellow young fellas. So we love to hear from Dr. Fulton. What are your parting words, and what are the encouragement you would give to young change makers and young professionals who are passionate about sustainability and very dedicated to take action towards sustainability?
Yeah, I first, I want to thank everyone for organizing this, and the team of panelists. I'm just a young supply chain. I wouldn't even call myself an expert just yet, but I'm also learning so much myself, from the conversation that we're having today, and it's really encouraging, and inspiring. I would say myself, and even leading down this journey. I would encourage, those out there, to not be afraid to look for those things that inspire you, and the people out there that inspire you. One of the things that even led me to start Lamar was I was really fascinated by Yvon Chouinard in his story. And for those that don't know, that's the founder of Patagonia. And their story is amazing when you look at a company, around sustainability, and the work that they've done within that space has been phenomenal, over their lifetime. And they have a program called Warnware, where it reminds me, is similar to kind of how, Bob, you were pointing out that home improvement program, where they actually take in used apparel goods, and they refurbish them, and they sell them through their through their Warnware site. And they even now actually have a buyback program, where they'll purchase back Patagonia gear that you've owned, as a customer. And I think is these types of things where, they build the brand identity, it makes you want to be a consumer of a company like that. And it creates this engagement where, well, it's not just me as a customer, but I'm now also a part of this social good, or this social need that's, needed in the environment and in the world. And so, I would say for those that are interested in those types of things, just research, what's out there. There's local organizations most likely around you that you might not, be able be aware of. The other thing, when it comes to, I think, sustainability and this circular economy, ask yourself, how can you create just little processes that move the needle, in your own home, right? Think about your own life, whether it's the water usage, how many cups, right? I have this problem, and it's something that I think about, on a daily basis. Like, well, every time I get a drink of water, do I need a new cup, right? Because it's created a lot of dishes, a lot of water waste. We've seen people have moved away from a lot of meats to vegan and vegetarian lifestyles that use less water, in those processes or cycles. So, there's ways for all of us, I think, to do our part, and that's what truly, I think, will help us, create this circular economy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fulton. It's very great to come see you share what you understand about circular economy with us, and it's really inspiring to listen to you and to learn from you extensively. So, to Professor Ali, we'd love to hear your parting words and how you feel the youth should take up action towards sustainability.
All right, thank you, Kamikun. Again, I appreciate you inviting me. It was a pleasure to be in this wonderful host of speakers. And again, I really appreciate your effort on making these academic and networking events during trying times. I will just tag on what Dr. Fulton was saying. It's from the product perspective, say 60s, 70s, quality was sort of seen as an add-on on the product, so you have to pay more for quality. We are at a stage right now, and in being like maybe since a decade, I will say, I'm emphasizing this in my courses too. Sustainability is not an add-on service; it's a must for the product. It is a must. You shouldn't pay extra for any pillar that it could be for a social good, for example, or the greenness of the product that may be helping for the GRI for the company. So it's those companies who actually, maybe supply chains, I should say, who take sustainability at heart and apply themselves to ingrain sustainability in every aspect of their production process to their products till it reaches to the hands of the consumers, and including the return of those products if when it reaches the end of life. As those companies who do this uh, with a belief in it and with the skills, uh, they will be the ones who will thrive, whether those are small companies or big companies. And that's coming more so because I have full confidence in the new generation and the generations following them. They're more cognizant about the issues going around in the world, and they're becoming more aware of sustainability issues. And I will finally say again, going back to my opening wording, if you will, it's all boiling down on consumers. If you don't want it, that's not going to happen. So if you want sustainable products, sustainable services, anything sustainable, we have to demand it, and that awareness will create a better future that we're looking for. Yeah. And thank you again.
Thank you, Professor Ali. And finally, before I hand over to Khadija and the EHTP Enterprises team, I would also like to encourage the youth and young change makers like myself to know that to know that one thing I've learned from these debates is that it's not just triple bottom line. There's a last thing to it now, which is culture. We have to imbibe the culture of sustainability. Whatever you do, you always have to remember that you have to make the world a better place, and you have to always ask yourself, every action you take, are you making it a better place? Because the world didn't start with you, and the world will end with you. You have to look forward, look backward, and imagine how you want to live the world and act along the way, along the line. And this is really very great experience to learn from these great professionals and experts and thought leaders. It's a great privilege really to be amongst you guys and to learn from you. I look forward to future opportunities to meet you in person and discuss sustainability, discuss sustainable supply chain management, to discuss diversely with you guys. And thank you, Khadija and EHTP team, for inviting me to moderate this. It's really a great privilege. I really appreciate. So now I hand over to Khadija and EHTP team to say their last word, and we all go home. I believe this has been been a great learning opportunity. I don't even want to leave because, well, we have to leave and time is money. It looks like. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kamikyun. It's a pleasure to meet you here today. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all going well. I'm very pleased to speak to you today in the third and last webinar of our lecture series entitled Engineer Plans the Recovery. The first webinar was about the circular economy for a better and more resilient built environment, in which we talked about circular economy in the domain of buildings. This is because our school formed civil, environmental, and hydraulic engineers in the first place. Then we moved to talk about e-supply chain and how transition to digital supply chain can help to reduce negative impacts on the environment. And this is too because our school forms high qualified engineers at computer science, geographic information science, and electronics. So it was a big opportunity for you to extend your knowledge and explore other major domains that are crucial for today's recovery. So our purpose today was to convince companies that sustainable supply chains are not only profitable, but also a solution for today's economy, environment, and social revival. This event is also for all supply chains and sustainability professionals that are following us at social media. Thanks to our association commitment and patriotism, this online webinar series will be headed by a national congress that aims to make a concrete contribution to the development of our country. I'd like to thank our dear speakers and our moderator for their participation, support, and commitment. I also warmly thank our media partners and our partner companies, without forgetting to reward the conference and development team who have made a great effort to guarantee quality webinars and to always meet your expectations. On those, under the tutelage of the Ministry of Logistics, Transport, Equipment and Water, on behalf of the l'École Hassania des Travaux Publics and Forum EHTP-Entreprises, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today and have a good time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.